completely unique path, and I think perhaps unknowingly, I don't know, a vision for our future. And I just want to say how much I respect your work, and it really is incredible. So thank you on behalf of humanity for staying the course. I think it's been a huge service for humanity and ongoing. So welcome.
Thank you, Pam. It's really nice to be here.
And have you always been telepathic, Susie?
As a child, I definitely had awarenesses that other people, I figured out very quickly didn't have. But I think, like everybody, children have all kinds of telepathic communication and capacity to see and hear and know. But we get conditioned out of it and we shut it down. And so that definitely happened for me. And then it got opened back up in a pretty wild way. So.
And do you want to share that, how you got started on this particular route?
Yeah, so as you shared, I was a pediatric speech language pathologist. I had a private practice in the state of Maine, and I had a new client on my caseload. I went to see him in a daycare center. And when I went to see him, this was 1999. I graduated with my master's degree in 1986. And the incidence of autism in 86 was 1 in 10,000. There was no education about autism because there wasn't very many. So I walked into the daycare center and he's walking back and forth and he's saying, "It's the millennium, it's 1999. And I just honestly thought he was a weird little kid. I mean, through the lens that I was looking at that time, I had no idea why he was just repeating things. He walked right up to me in the daycare center, looked me right in the eyes, which is not common for a child diagnosed with autism, and he said, "Master." And when he said "Master," I felt this like cascade of energy like run down through my body, and it was very disorienting. And as I'm listening to him, I remember thinking, who's the master here? Like, who can say a word and like literally make something run through your body? So I took him to the back of the daycare center, sat down with my back against the door, because of course he's a little 4-year-old and he wants to get out and be with his friends. So he was marching around again. It's the millennium, it's 1999. And as he was doing that, and I'm sitting with my back against the door, all of a sudden, I see like a light body floating above his physical body. I had no idea what that was. I just saw it was like a paper doll cutout of light, same size as his physical body, but up and to the right. And the only thing that connected his physical body to the light body to his physical body was a little tail that hung off of his foot, light body foot, and dangled down into his heart space. And I kept rubbing my eyes, trying to get that to go away. It wouldn't. And I was, still a little bit discombobulated, you might say, from that word master and from what was coming through that. And so when I couldn't get it to go away, I just said in my head, "Okay, what's going on here? Like, what is this?" And I heard a little boy's voice in my head telepathically. He said, "That's my light body. You're here to put my light body back with my physical body." And so I had no idea why he thought I could do that. I had no idea how we were going to do that. But I knew absolutely that it was going to happen. Can't even explain that, but I did know that it was going to happen. I also knew that my life had changed that day. And basically, he took me through a year-long process where he would come to me through telepathy. He would bilocate into my home, to my space. He would show up in dreams. And he would tell me, "This is what I want you to do. This is what I want you to bring. This is what..." And at the same time, I was just being bombarded. It was like he put a key in and unlocked something. And all of this capacity that I didn't know I had, all of the guides and the supports and they just came flooding in that year. And at the end of that year, I did an energy session on his behalf from my house to his house. And the next day, so I did the energy session from a distance. But the next day, I went to physically go and see him. And when he opened the door, Mom opens the door, he's standing at the top of the staircase. And he goes, "Hi, Susie, how are you?" Like communication just clear. And so I, took him to the back of his house to his sister's room, and we're just writing. He's writing and speaking. And he says, "It's the most amazing advance. You love them." And he said, "Now advance the magic."
Wow.
So
that was the first time he'd ever spoken.
that was the first time he spoke, I would say, in a coherent, meaningful fashion. Like he had some like repetitive speech, like it's the millennium, it's 1999, but nothing that made sense, nothing that was reciprocal kind of communication. So, I mean, I was on my knees in tears because I knew exactly what had happened, and I knew that he had walked me right through that whole thing. So
from that point on, he really taught you how to communicate with other autistic children, nonverbal.
really from the get-go, from that first meeting in 1999, he was opening me back up to be able to interface between their worlds and ours. And so interestingly, every child that came after that, I got more and more children diagnosed with autism on my caseload after that. And every single one of them was telepathic. Every single one of them would tell me what was required so that they could feel more comfortable here, or what I needed to share with their parents. And after a period of time, then it became like the collective consciousness of that population started showing up. So yeah, it was quite a ride. So.
That's really remarkable. So you, between the nonverbal autistic child and the parents, you say you have to act as a coherent bridge, holding coherent energy in order to translate telepathically.
Well, yes, and thank goodness that's beginning to really change with the energetic environment that we're all living in now, whereas consciousness is evolving collectively. That's getting a whole lot easier. But early on, it was like the kids' field was in a very refined dimensional state. The parents and the collective field was in a denser vibrational state. And it was like ships that pass in the night. The parents or the professionals were seeing these kids through the lens of separation. The children were seeing the professionals and the parents through the lens of oneness. And for a long time, those two worlds just didn't meet. They just didn't connect. So for a while, I was a bit of a bridge, like an intermediary, where almost holding a coherence in these triads, the triad of that world, the kids' worlds, the parents' world, and I was just holding that coherent field so the two could have a conversation or could communicate.
I mean, this must have been life-changing, not only for the children, but also for the parents. I mean, hugely, heart-centered, compassionate work. Just incredible. Wow. So are the children teaching us multidimensionality, would you say, Susie?
100%. It's like they came almost like canaries in the coal mine and also precursors to the new human condition. So the canary in the coal mine part is from the beginning when they started coming in mass, which I believe was during the harmonic convergence in 1987. I think that opened some kind of gateway or portal so that more and more of these souls could start being born. When they came in, they were immediately showing us, things that didn't work in the education system, in the way our dietary, requirements, pharmaceuticals. They were, if you just watch how they came in and then what we've all been made aware of because they're here, then you see that they're just showing us what doesn't work for any of us, what doesn't work on a very tangible level. And then you've also got the capacity that they hold as, you might say, multidimensional beings or beings within that field of oneness. To me, it makes perfect sense, Pam, that if you function in a field of oneness, of course, we're one. So of course we can telepathically communicate. Of course, if I send, feelings of love toward you, you'll feel that. Or if I send feelings of discord to you, you'll feel that. It's all within the same field of oneness.
Yeah.
So these kids are reading minds and they're reading emotions and they're telepathically communicating. But from my vantage point, they're just saying, this is what we all are. This is what it is to be in that field of oneness. And so, of course, we can heal beyond time and space. Of course, if we're holding a more coherent vibrational frequency, of course, that can offer somebody else that same resonance, right? Of course, it can offer somebody else that same capacity because you trigger that in that field of oneness. So to me, they were showing us what wasn't working for humanity, but they're also showing us what capacities lie within us. So
they really are kind of teachers and forerunners of what we might call the new human in New Earth.
Yes, a long time ago, I used to run a course called The New Human, and it was just that. They held the template, you might say, of what we were all evolving into, but they held that template long before most people could even begin to acknowledge it or to see it. They held that template almost like holding a frequency until we could evolve into it. And now, with things like the telepathy tapes and other information that's out there, it's just so exciting because you go, humanity's ready for it now. They weren't ready for it necessarily in 1999, but the fact that something like that can be so enthusiastically received just lets us know that humanity's evolved to a place where they can see this population, maybe more so than ever.
Yeah, beautiful, Susie. Thank you for that. And it's, so interesting because if we weren't aware, we as humans weren't aware, we think that it was for nonverbal autistic people. They often appear to be very uncomfortable in their physical bodies or kind of incoherent. But
Yes.
however, they are holding a very strong field of coherence at a higher level. And that seems to be such a kind of paradox.
It's a paradox until we understand that in that frequency band, the frequency band where they are very coherent is, you might say, much higher than ours or most of humanity's, right? So what they're showing in their dysregulation is not their incoherence, but ours.
Wow. So they're like a mirror for humanity.
They're a mirror for humanity. And I remember when I very first said, well, you know, why do you seem to be so up and out of your bodies? You know, why do you feel like you're not really present here? And they said, because first, here is not yet the frequency of love. And when it is, we'll be able to be much more regulated in our bodies as that. And two, everybody looks at them as if they're up and out, but we never consider how up and out we are in our, you know, and it's traumatic having a human experience. You know, it's especially for those of us, you and I and other light workers who have come in and want to be of support to that field of oneness or want to be in support of wholeness. Well, we all met with dysregulation when we came in to one degree or another. And so the invitation from these kids all the time is to acknowledge, yeah, we're all a little bit up and out. Yes, there has been trauma, you might say, in the human experience, but just because there's trauma doesn't mean that we can't reconnect to who we are in truth.
Yeah, yeah. And you know, it's so interesting that they are reflecting humanity's separation back to them.
Yes, yes, and it's especially right now, Pam. It's like I have so many kiddos that I've been interacting with that they'll say, you know, they're getting a little bit more dysregulated right now, but humanity's more dysregulated right now as the chaos kind of gives way to a whole new way of being.
Yeah.
And it's exciting, you know, it's exciting that it's giving way to this new way of being. And there's still, I'll say, holding a tension point.
Yeah.
Until that can happen.
Yeah, and we're absolutely in that precipice, aren't we? That turning point. Yeah. We could all, we're in it. We can all feel it. So, and you've talked about the nonverbal autistic children meeting kind of collectively in a unified field. I think they meet on somewhere called the Hill, which isn't a physical place. It's a it's a psychic place where they can all share telepathically with each other. And I'd love to understand that a little more.
Yeah. And I see that particular vibrational space a little bit differently than maybe they do in the telepathy tape. So let me share that. And then again, when I've asked my clients about this, again, within that field of oneness, we can connect with other souls in a particular vibrational field within any one of those. Anywhere you want to place your attention, there you are.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So within that, I almost see, like, let's say that field of oneness as the internet and the hill as chat rooms. There are a variety of hills in that field of oneness. And so, you know, you have different kids because they're functioning in different frequency bands. It's just easier to communicate with that frequency band. And so just because they can't connect and communicate verbally in this world doesn't mean that they don't have their resonant peers in other worlds and are learning and growing and exploring and being interested in all kinds of things, supporting each other. So that's very much what I think the Hill is. And also very true that there are multiple hills is at least what it looks like through that field of oneness. So
yeah, it's just what a gift you've given these children and the parents, but also to humanity. I think it's truly extraordinary. So I want to thank you for that too. So are you finding that with the kind of increase in energies currently, that your clients, the children, are making more rapid progress than perhaps they have in the past?
Yes. And just over the last, since the Lion's Gate, since 8/8, there was a series of children that came in, one on 8/8, one right around 10/10, and then one right after 12/12. So, and it was just fascinating to me because throughout the years, different kids have taken me into their worlds, I guess is the best way to say it. I've had a lot of experiences where my consciousness met, almost like an out of body experience, I guess, Pam. It's like where yeah, I left my body and met them where they were communicating, where they were wanted to share whatever they were sharing. But something different is happening now. So on 8/8, I met a young man, Gavin, who wanted to meet with me in Sedona. He wanted to meet, he said he wanted to meet me in a vortex because he thought I could help him speak. And I thought, okay, that's an awful lot of pressure. I don't think I want to go. It's really my first thought. But what I heard from my guides is no, go. This is important, because one of the other things that Gavin had as an intention is he wanted to embody, almost like create a pathway from where he hangs out into his body so that other children like him could follow, right? He was trying to create that way forward. So I went to Sedona to meet him, and we were all on the way over to Sedona. He had given me a song. It's called 1,000 Years. And the words are basically, I've loved you for 1,000 years. I'll love you for 1,000 more, right? And it's so he asked me telepathically to sing that song on my drive over to Sedona. And then he asked me to play it again so he could sing it to me. So that's happening in the car on the way over there. And then I got there, I'm meeting a gentleman who telepathically communicates with him, as well as his mother and father. We sit on a blanket, at a resort in Sedona, and they're like, okay, well, what are we going to do next? It's like, I don't know. It's like, I don't know. We're just here to be together as one, in this. And I thought, I'll just play the song that he asked me to play. So I played it on my phone. And as that happened, Pam, what I was witnessing his ninth dimensional self start to just come right in. It was like it was not downgrading, it was like stepping down, right? It was stepping down in frequency and frequency and frequency. So I had my full attention on Gavin. And as he came into the body, I put my hand on his chest and I said, I am so glad to see you here. I'm so glad to see you here. Thank you for what you're doing. I pulled my hand away and I was in whatever space I was in to see that. And then I look up and everybody around me is crying their eyes out. And I was like, what happened? What's going on? They said, didn't you see it? Some of them had seen that light body come into form, but what they were all physically noticing was that I guess something happened where the wind kicked up as Gavin came into his body, and it literally displaced physical reality. And we had wind going around us like leaves, and I missed that whole part because I was watching Gavin come in. But that's what they witnessed. And so from that moment forward, we have, because his soul was choosing what his soul was choosing, he is coming in more gently. He is using more communication. And I was telling his mother, I said, it's not a matter of when. Yeah, I mean, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when now that he communicates, because this was his soul's choice. It wasn't us saying, you need to communicate. This was something he had chosen. So that happened, and I had never seen somebody choose something like that and actually make it manifest. So that was telling me that collective human consciousness and their consciousness is getting closer together. It's almost like we can couple these two worlds in ways we haven't been able to before. And then I met right before 1010. The collective consciousness of the kids was saying, pay attention to Three Eye Atlas.
Yeah, I'm really interested in this. So it was the children that tipped you off to 3i.
Yeah, I had no thought of, I mean, I knew it was happening, but I didn't have any intention of connecting with it, nor did I even think I could, quite frankly. So, children, yes. Three Eye Atlas, interstellar objects, maybe not.
Yeah.
So, but right before that, I met a young man named Siddharth. Siddharth is 6, and when you check in with his energy, he's like a Buddha. He's like this stable, Buddhic kind of energy. And when we were checking in about Three Eye Atlas, he said, Three Eye Atlas is a reality revolution. Yeah. He said, don't be afraid to jump in. And I said, what am I jumping into? My logical mind kicks in. What am I jumping into? And he said, reality as it actually is, instead of how it was conditioned to be. So that got me real excited about Three Eye Atlas. Like, what is Three Eye Atlas doing that is going to shift our perception, literally our perception of reality, a perception of who we actually are? And so those two things happen, but I'll say the last one to me was somehow the one that just shook me, I guess. I mean, it made me tangibly realize that this coupler between worlds was really happening, and that there wasn't such a distance between the reality of oneness and the reality of separation. What happened is I had a brand new client that had come from the telepathy tapes, and her son's Calvin. And during the session, this beautiful mother asked all the same questions that most mothers ask. I just want to connect with my child. I want to know who they are. And so I closed my eyes to telepathically connect with her son. And as I did, I felt like somebody passed me physically, like I felt a brush across my arm. And that was different, because usually when you telepathically communicate, you're meeting in not physical fields, right? So he passes by, and then with my eyes closed, he turns around and looks at me and he goes, "Oh, you're speaking to me." And I thought, yeah, it's like this. Yes, I am. Why is that any different? He said, you're in the field of oneness. He goes, you're in my world. You're not looking at me through the lens of separation. And so instead of seeing him from my perspective into his world, he was somehow saying that I was in that same frequency band. I was like, okay, this was a brand new client to me, so I'm a little disoriented. I'm a little like, okay, now what do we do? and I said, okay, that's great, but your mom still has these questions. So how do we want to handle this? And he said, bring her to me. And so I've never had a kid, Pam, say, bring the parent vibrationally to where the child is. That just hasn't quite been possible, because the frequency bands are too different. So I'm kind of like, okay, I don't know what we're going to do here. And he says, put her in an elevator. And I'm going, oh my God. Now I have to say to this mom, you're going to get in an elevator and you're going to go to where your kid is. It's like, please don't make me do this. It's like, I just didn't want to have. And he said, no, he said, just say that and she'll understand. So I told her what he said. I said, are you up for going for that ride, you know, literally and metaphorically? And she was like, yes. So we got, in my mind's eye, we got in the elevator together, go up to Calvin's world, you might say. The doors open, and I knew, Pam, the moment those doors open, she was saying, oh my gosh, what's happening to me? Oh my gosh, what's going on? Things feel a little disorienting. It's like I feel a little bit like I'm not in my body. I feel, and I said, I think that you're getting a clear vantage point of what it's like to be your son, like how he perceives 3D reality. And like the way you're hearing it, the way you're feeling it in your body. And she's nervous, as you would be. And so she's breathing through that, and we're helping her stabilize that coherent field. And then I just said to her, I said, if you're where we think you are, you should be able to call him over to you and perceive him in a new way. And she did, and I knew the minute it happened because she was tears. I was in tears. She was in tears. And she was just saying how beautiful he was, how amazing it was to see him, through that lens instead of through the lens of separation. And I can't explain it. I can't. But what I knew the minute it happened, I thought, oh my gosh, humanity is closer to that field of oneness than they've ever been before, because I don't think that would be possible if it was still in that full sense of separation. Yeah.
That is just so beautiful. That the children have led you. They found you as a kind of magical messenger, translator. It's just so beautiful that they have led you, and you've stepped into that role so willingly. And I can't imagine the depth of emotion that you all felt.
It's just even thinking about it, and and I worked with a physicist, Bill Tiller, from Stanford, and he did intention experiments and such. And I just remember him saying that any time that we move from one frequency to another, first we vacillate back and forth, but at some point there will be a coupler that will be able to hold those two frequencies together, and the higher frequency will always dominate the lower, and so as we're moving into love, as we're moving into compassion, as we're seeing ourselves beyond what we've perceived before, that will take hold, and that will be the new reality. And I think that's where we are right now.
They're the forerunners. It's quite remarkable. So Susie, were they talking about the reality revolution before Three Eye Atlas came into view, as it were? It was Three Eye Atlas that did it, because they talked about it feeling good and being on the same frequency as them. Can you talk a bit about that? Because that was just fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I wasn't interested in, connecting with it, but they kept saying, please do, because it vibrationally, it's much more like the field of oneness, or its wholeness. That's what it's bringing about. And Siddharth would say that he told his mother through telepathy that it was like a seeding, or like a humanitarian airdrop, kind of like where we're just opening up. And so when I checked in with it, the first thing that was really obvious is that as it was moving through our solar system and crossing, Mars, and you're the astrologer. I don't know what went through.
Venus,
But
etc. Yeah.
yes, but as it went through across those different planets, that it was actually changing our relationship to those planets.
I love that. And I wanted to dig into that because you also said, as it was closest to the Earth on the 19th of December, I'm quoting from your newsletter here, resets what that planet has come to represent collectively, clearing the way for a deeper truth from each planet to emerge. And also, when on the 19th of December, it was closest to the Earth, also resetting our relationship with the Earth. It alters
Yes.
our relationship with each planetary archetype. Now, as an astrologer, that is beyond exciting. So and I know you've brought through some beautiful meditations from Three Eye Atlas as well. So I would love to dive into that and understand that at a deeper level, because that's going to change my world for sure.
It's yeah, and for whatever reason, this is emotional too. It's like there's something about if we've lived on this planet for how many ever thousands of years we've lived on this planet in separation, in division, and Three Eye Atlas felt like it was coming through to kind of almost course correct that, like maybe Mars isn't just the planet of war. Maybe Mars has a deeper resonance to something within us. Maybe Venus is not just the planet of love. Maybe it has a deeper resonance. Maybe both of those are coming into a oneness or a wholeness, not either or, but both and. And so and then the one about the Earth on the 19th really hit me because I think that we've been so traumatized by having incarnation after incarnation in separation. But it felt to me like Three Eye Atlas was resetting our relationship to Earth, that we could be in wholeness and in oneness, in love here. And that just and that is also the frequency that the kids have always said that they need to be here. We won't be fully embodied here until here is the frequency of love. But here comes some interstellar consciousness or flying through space just on time to reorient our relationship not only with our planet but with our solar system. And and what does that actually mean for us and how we perceive ourselves if all of that is taking on a whole new reality, a reality revolution?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things coming into my head because in a couple of videos I've mentioned, I could see in the astrology there was going to be some kind of a consciousness leap for humanity. But I knew there was another piece to it. I knew there was another catalyst, but I didn't know what it was until Three Eye Atlas turned up right on time, closest to Earth, right on the brink of the solstice, which, my good friend Kelly Kolodny described as the birth of a new galactic consciousness. And then you and I were chatting before the recording about my conversation with David Clements, where he was talking about these membranes which are reconnecting Earth to the rest of the solar system, because we've been disconnected, as I understand, for eons of time. And we're now, as of January the 15th, he said, just a few days ago, reconnecting to the entire solar system. So, I mean, your work is funneling straight into what he is seeing and receiving from his guides. I mean, this is extraordinary in terms of, yes, this real sense of reconnecting to our galactic family and a galactic consciousness. And your work is such an important part of that. So, wow. I mean, do you feel that the children are actually demonstrating galactic consciousness way ahead of us understanding it?
Yeah, that was when I very first started connecting with them. I was like, okay, well, where are you, like vibrationally? Like, what are we talking about? Where are you from? And they would give me a dimension, you might say, out of a body, and they would give me a dimension in the body. So the frequency of the body was actually dampening the full dimensional expression, But even in a body, many of them were seventh, eighth, ninth dimensional beings in a body. And at that time, we were deep into third dimension. This is early on. So you can see how a third dimensional experience could be very disruptive to a seventh, eighth, ninth dimensional being. One of the things that has been showing up in the New World Portal, the community that I run, is, and when David said membranes, we were talking about it just last week as like veils. So we work a lot in spheres, like our body's in a sphere, the sphere of our totality. Our bodies are a reference point within that sphere of totality or oneness or wholeness. And we can have access to any one of those access points up to a point, because collectively there have been these, we'll use David's word, membranes or veils that have kept us focused on a much narrower reality of who we are in truth. But as humanity's evolving, those are burning off. Yeah. And as they burn off, guess what? Now all of a sudden, oh my gosh, I do have that capacity, or I do have that awareness, or this is who I am in truth, not what I was trained or conditioned to believe that I was. And we're in full throttle mode as far as I can tell with that right now. And I also think it's the reason why sometimes people are going, oh my gosh, I've had this experience and I don't know what to make of it. But we can normalize all of that because it's just the broader scope of who we actually are. And we're getting to see it now.
It's just so beautiful because these children, as you know way better than me, Susie, have had such a hard life. They've been shoved to the periphery of society. They've been put into places where they shouldn't have been and, given drugs or whatever. They have had a very, very tough time in the third dimensional world and, categorized as not normal or whatever, but they've actually been the heralds of this new age. And thank goodness for you that you have been able to be the connector for that.
I think it's actually common, for people who come into the world, holding something that is a little ahead of the game, you might say. I think that that's really common, and I don't think that we'll fully know the whole scope of who these souls are in truth and the great gift that they've given humanity simply by being here until probably on the other side of 2027. I think once we get past there, we've got enough vibrational momentum as a collective to really being able to, they used to always say, realize, see with real eyes. To realize who they actually are. And I just have such gratitude for even the fact that they could be here all this time and have endured what they've endured. I have a lot of gratitude for them holding that frequency band until we could collectively match it, or even as an invitation to match it. And no doubt in my mind that these souls are galactic, sometimes angelic in nature. They're bringing all kinds of information with them that probably will also be released as we're more and more ready for it. So.
And also, Susie, of course, 3-Eye Atlas hasn't finished because it's still on its flyby and will fly by closest to Jupiter on March 16th, 17th. And are you getting any information yourself or from the children about what that actually represents for us?
It's a new beginning. It's a new, we're getting all of these with each new moon, with each new cycle, we're being invited over and over again to step into the new. But I think Three Eye Atlas, is it true, Pam, that once Three Eye Atlas goes by Jupiter, then it's leaving our solar system? Is that?
As we know, because this is unprecedented, it doesn't appear to be on an orbit, it's a kind of one-time flyby. But my sense is, and I don't know what your sense is, Susie, that this is just the beginning of other interstellar objects appearing in our skies.
I think so, absolutely. And once it goes past Jupiter, I think it is the start of that new beginning. I think that galactic self, that awareness of the capacity that we each hold as human beings and galactic beings simultaneously, I think that's all just going to start showing up more and more. And I think the outer world, the structured world of separation, is just going to collapse faster and faster as that happens as well. But one of the things that the kids said about Three Eye Atlas was that because it was reorienting our relationship with our solar system, it was reorienting our relationship with ourselves, that this reality revolution would come about. They also said that Three Eye Atlas, wherever it started at a time where we were whole, where we were in oneness, where we were not disconnected from our source selves. And so even it flying through was kind of like seeding that memory back in. But once that memory is seeded back in, it makes perfect sense to me that other interstellar objects would start flying through, reminding us, you might say, more of the specifics of what that actually means.
Yeah, because it's so interesting. It's closest to Jupiter, 16th, 17th of March, just before that Aries equinox. And I've never, going into late March, April, I've scarcely seen any astrology with so many planets in Aries, which is all about, new beginnings in a huge way. I mean, we've got something like, going into April, 8 orbiting bodies, or possibly 9, all in Aries. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. So it's like a whole relaunch for humanity. And Jupiter in Cancer, Jupiter's about wisdom, as you know, and future vision. But in Cancer, it's also about ancestral wisdom and ancient wisdom that's been
coming back.
Yeah, it's going to be reignited for us as well.
Yeah.
And so I could feel my consciousness expanding all through this conversation. It's just amazing. So it seems like that collapse of the old order, which I can see in the astrology too, is going to happen really fast from this point on, because there's so much momentum into that new consciousness.
Yep. Yeah. And, I think when I was listening to your conversation with David too, he was talking about that speeding up, and we don't have to suffer through that. We can literally choose, again, within that field of oneness. We're not used to having choice, but can we allow ourselves to just play again, to have a beginner's mind, to have that innocence of like, well, if I was choosing, what would I like to choose again, if I can choose? Because the minute you start tapping into that aspect of your wholeness, or that aspect of human consciousness or totality, whatever you want to call it, you're there. Yeah. You're there. As less and less separation happens, you're there. So it's like, I love this idea of, and you speak about this often, like choosing love, choosing the direction that you want to experience within a day or within a month, or, where are we going, has everything to do with where we collectively place our focus.
Yeah, I bang on about that eternally, as it's banging a drum. So it's absolutely fascinating that we are so close, and we're within a whisper of that Aries equinox that's happening. So and I know other people who've connected, and I've had some sense of this myself, people who've connected with the energy of Three Eye Atlas. They talk about love, they talk about bliss. And what seems to be so important is, yes, love, yes, bliss, yes, wholeness, but coherence seems to be the key. And it's something you've talked about a lot in this conversation. And of course, everything in 3D is to disrupt that coherence, to become chaotic and fearful and all the rest. So we have to be very disciplined with ourselves not to get caught up in that chaos, because we end up feeding the old world that we want to step out of. And so coherence is absolutely top priorities, an entry key almost into everything else you're sharing today.
Coherence to me feels like allowing both and. Instead of being in either or, it's right or it's wrong, it's good or it's bad. It's, it's quite frankly, to me, it feels like it's all moving us in the same direction. All the chaos is focusing us on love. It's like, so it's doing its job, and it's helping us move. And the discomfort that we feel sometimes because we're going through whatever symptoms of this energetic, evolution are, it's like we can make those wrong and bad, or we can say that those are actually working on our behalf as well. As those symptoms are arising, and we kind of go, okay, that's working towards our movement into oneness or our wholeness, so that we allow it to be both and instead of either or. I think either or has been what we've been conditioned to. Whether it's political parties or whether it's, even in spiritual communities, I think this either or can get us stuck. And whereas we're like, no, it's like it's all working. We are simply moving into oneness, period.
Yeah.
It's like that's just what's happening right now. And both the perceived shadowy aspects of that and the beautiful, blissful light aspects of that are all working to the same end.
Yeah, so. It's a very good point, actually, Susie, because those difficulties act as a catalyst.
Yes.
The challenge, whether we go back to the pandemic or, what's happening, unfolding in the world geopolitically right now, they are catalysts for us as humanity to raise our game.
Yes.
Because otherwise, if we don't have the challenge, just like the grit in the oyster, if we don't have the challenge, we don't get the pearl.
Yes.
So I think to view them as catalysts is a beautiful way to see all that. And so absolutely our evolution to this next level is absolutely unstoppable. All the people I have conversations with, it's just unstoppable, and it's going at quite a pace now. It's like a snowball rolling down a hill.
Yeah.
It's gathering pace every day, and it's just so thrilling to think that in this one lifetime that we are able to move from 3D reality into higher dimensions within that one lifetime, with the non-verbal autistic children actually leading a lot of this understanding. I mean, it's just exquisite.
Yeah, and every time I connect with them, whether it's the collective or an individual, the other thing that they say is that if we look at their capacity, things that are coming out through the telepathy tapes or in ways that we're understanding, oh my gosh, they do have capacity beyond what we have accessed within ourselves. But what they say is if we look at them and assume that that's just them, if we just put them on a pedestal in one way or another and don't recognize and realize that they're just showing us what humanity is evolving into as far as those capacities. They always say, please don't miss the message. Please don't miss what the real message is and just put us on a pedestal for it. It's, this is what we're becoming. This is what we're evolving into. And yeah.
Wow. And as we move to the close, Susie, are there any other thoughts you would like to share for us? This has been so inspirational. Any other thoughts you'd like to share with us? Because clearly we are absolutely in the crucible of change, incredibly fast-moving times, which are hugely exciting. Is there anything else you'd say, either from the children or from yourself, to help guide us through these coming months? Because I look at the astrology of the next 3 months and think, wow, this is big astrology. So
Yeah, and I think that that's a good point. It's like the the changes that are occurring, the movement that we are in right now, it's so much bigger than any one little soul. It's so much bigger. This is a collective evolution, and we can dig in our heels and say we want to stay in that separation energy. And quite frankly, it just gets painful. So, and that's purposeful too. It gets painful until you just take your hands off the reins and say, okay, let's go in this direction. This is what we're doing. And, but there's no doubt in my mind that the energetics of right now are so powerful. They're so big, so much bigger than any individual. And like you say, that snowball rolling down the hill has got quite a momentum now. And so it's just a matter of sitting back and being curious, you know, having that beginner's mind and what could possibly evolve now that we're stepping into more of who we actually are. I mean, that's a curiosity I want to follow all the way. So
yeah, me too. And with all those planets in Aries, that's the beginner's mind, you know. And
yes.
Saturn Neptune, that conjunction on the 20th of February, 0 of Aries, that's just a blank slate, pure potentiality. What are you going to create, humanity? You have all these incredibly beautiful, rich, high dimensional ingredients. What are you going to create?
Yep.
And
Yep.
that's why we have to be so aware, I think, of our state of being, our thinking, our feelings, our state of being. Everything cascades, I feel, from our state of being.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I really want to thank you, Susie, again for your courage, your compassion, your gifts, your enormous heart in just following this tough and really unique but beautiful path on behalf of the children, but actually on behalf of humanity. I really want to say that. And Susie's work, as I'm sure all the viewers feel, you know, it's been really emotional, actually.
It has been for me too. Yeah.